Hey everybody out there, this is Seto, and today for you guys, we are back again with another History of Yu-Gi-Oh! Episode for you guys today. I hope all of you enjoyed the first episode. If you have not seen it, there will be a link down in the description below and a link at the end of the video if you would like to go back and see that section. So in episode 1, we talked about, and I'll recap for you guys, we talked about the roots of the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! So more specifically, we talked about the OCG. So we talked about the early 90s, very early 2000s, the roots of the game of Yu-Gi-Oh!, Kazuki Takahashi, the birth of Bandai, and how Konami brought the rights to the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! That's mainly what we focused on. And to show the quick power creep that really happened after Konami took over. Today, though, however, we're going to be focusing the first episode of this series on the TCG. And from here on out, for the most part, guys, in each History of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Episode, we're going to be mainly focusing on the TCG. The dates we are going to be focusing on, first off, guys, are going to be September 2001 to May 2002. However, we are mainly going to be covering March, April, and May before the first limited list came out, which came out in May of 2002, the end of May. We're going to be talking about those 3 months in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! They were the birth of the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! You have Legend of Blue Eyes, the structure decks, all those cool things we are going to cover in this episode today. So you may be asking, Seto, why did you say we're going to cover September to May 2002 if the product didn't even come out till March of 2002? That doesn't make sense, Seto. Well, the reason for that being is in September 29th, 2001, on Kids WB, the first ever Yu-Gi-Oh! Show aired over here in North America on Kids WB, September 29th. Think about what was going on that month, and it's probably one of the reasons why a lot of you never remember seeing Yu-Gi-Oh! As a kid at that time. The reason for that being was on September 11th, 2001, we had the Twin Towers and the Pentagon was attacked, as well as the plane that crashed in Pennsylvania, Flight 911, I believe it was. But a lot of things were going on in the U.S. at that time. The world was changing. It was a nightmare. People were scared. So I doubt anybody's focus in their memory bank was on Yu-Gi-Oh! At the time, because just 2 weeks prior to the show airing in September 29th, Kids WB on the 29th, all that other stuff had happened. But the cool thing was, Kids WB also had Pokemon and a whole bunch of other shows at the time that were really awesome in the early 2000s, if you remember them. So it aired on a Saturday morning cartoon on the September 29th block. That's when it aired. And that's what it showed. And it showed and it ran, if you guys are wondering how long the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series ran, it ran from September 29th, 2001 to January 10th, 2006, excuse me. That is how long the Yu-Gi-Oh! Show ran for about 5 years, and I'm talking about the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Show. So Yugi, Kaiba, and all those guys, you see over here, yeah, right there. You see a picture of them probably right there, all the guys over there. So yeah, you see them all over there. That show aired from September 29th to June 2010, June 10th, 2006, which was if you guys know what the final episode was, it was pretty much a Tim going into the afterlife and the end of the show. And later on, we got the movie in 2017, yeah. But 16 in the OCG. So let's fast forward a whole bunch of months now as the show's going on. So the show, you gotta remember, guys, is pretty much going on. And by the time The Legend of Blue Eyes comes out, we are pretty much in what is known as the Duelist Kingdom era of the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! So the game's been out for a while, and the first set to be released is The Legend of Blue Eyes. So we're going to fast forward now, guys, till March 2002. I know we skipped about 6 months there, but like I said, in September the show aired, and by the time we get to March, we're in an era in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Which is mostly known as the Duelist Kingdom era because of what is happening on in Duelist Kingdom. As you guys know, in Duelist Kingdom, you got Yugi facing off against Pegasus, Kaiba, Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, Joey starts to learn how to duel, a whole bunch of things are going on. But as you guys know, in the original show, in Duelist Kingdom, the rules were a lot different, which we'll talk about in a bit here. compared to the official Konami rules. We'll get to that in a bit, but let's talk about the sets that came out at that time. So in March 8th, 2002, we had the Legend of Blue Eyes set finally dropped, as you see right here. Amazing set. However, most of the set was normal vanilla monsters. A lot of them you probably don't know. There's a lot of fusions that we mainly know about because we used them in things like Madolches with instant fusion years later, like Carbonara Warrior, as you see right here. We'll talk about him in a bit more detail, but there was a lot more just vanilla stuff that would never get used for years on end. And then there was very powerful things which came out, things like Regeki, Darkhold, Change of Heart, things of that nature, which we'll talk about a little bit more in deep detail. We're going to go, after we talk about both of these sets, we're going to go back and talk about all the cards that have had impacts on the meta that came out of the Legend of Blue Eyes and the starter decks. So let's jump on now to the starter decks. So on March 29th, I believe it was here, 2002, you have the Yugi and Kaiba starter decks dropping. These are the iconic starter decks that just about anybody that's played for years, this happened. And it's hard to imagine that in March 2002, I was 11 years old, about to turn 12 in May, but you know, I was very young, and I remember when these starter decks came out, I remember going to pick them up and playing with them. So that happened a long ass time ago. I was 11 years old then. I am 26. I'll be 27, you know, later in May. So I'm very long in the days of my youth, I guess you could say, in this video. When I was a young Seto Kaiba. Yeah. Oh my gosh. But yes, all jokes and bad jokes and puns aside there. Yes, those in March is when you have the main product rolling out for Konami at that time. Nothing really comes out in April, and come May, towards the end of May, we have the first limited list to come out in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh!, which we're going to talk about right now. So let's talk about the limited list, and then we're going to go back and talk about the key cards that came out of the Legend of Blue Eyes and the starter decks. So the one thing that you may want to know, and it's kind of cool of note, is there was only one set of cards that was limited. And it's a set of cards that has been the longest on the limited list in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. It was on the first limited list, and to this day that I'm doing this video, they are still limited. And what are they? All 5 pieces of Exodia. However, people believe that there's a 6th piece of Exodia that goes somewhere in between the legs. Some people hypothesize it's Little D, some people hypothesize it's Ellis the Tormentor. I don't know. That's up for you to decide. But all jokes aside there, pretty much all Exodia pieces got limited on the first limited list. Now, if you guys are wondering what a limited list is, it's different from a ban list. It wouldn't be until 2004, after the well-known Chaos format, which we will get to a couple episodes down the road, that we had our first ban list. Our cards that came out for about the first 3 years of the game were not banned. They were only limited. So any spells, traps, or monsters were not banned. They were only limited. People hypothesized that the reason for this was Konami didn't expect that the game would grow so powerful in the OCG. Also, people hypothesized at the same time that, well, the game was still in its infancy in the first 3 years. Or Konami just didn't think the game was going to succeed over here in the TCG. Different people have different opinions, but however, that's what happened. Limited list. We have all 5 pieces of Exodia. For the spell cards that were limited, we have Change of Heart, broken. Imagine, you know, Change of Heart stealing a monster and sacking it off for a summoned skull. Broken. Just take your opponent's monster, steal it, bring out a 2,500 beater, vanilla. Broken. Yeah, in 2017 it's not broken, but still broken in 2002. Then we have Darkhold that was limited to 1. And Darkhold was one of the ones that was on this list for a long time. Darkhold, you'll see off and on. It goes from banned to limited to 1, off and on. Same thing with one of these other cards we're going to talk about later down the road, Heavy Storm. But next up we have Monster Reborn, which was limited to 1, and as you guys know, does that same, has always done for most of Yu-Gi-Oh's history, that old song and dance with Dark Hole before Dark Hole went to 2 of a couple formats ago, where it pretty much did this song and dance. It got banned and it would come back to 1, and banned and back to 1. Pot of Greed went back to 1. If you guys didn't know, before this May 2002 limited list, you could run 3 Pot of Greed in your deck. 3 Pot of Greed. Draw a Pot of Greed. Oh, look, I drew a Pot of Greed. Activate another Pot of Greed. Plus, just imagine that for a second. But you have to remember, the game was young. Then you have another limited spell card that was limited, was Regeki. So that was a powerful card. You just wiped the board. It was more powerful than Dark Hole. If they had a ban list, maybe Regeki would have got banned and Dark Hole stayed at 1, but the game was so young and everything. Who knows? Traps that were banned, as you see here, there was no traps that were banned on that list. Now let's go to semi-limited cards. There were no semi-limited monsters or traps. So no traps were really hit. And at the time, you have to remember, guys, there was really not a lot of powerful traps at the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! You pretty much are only dealing with the Legend of Blue Eyes set and the starter deck. And one of the most powerful traps at the time was this card, Wabuku, as you guys may know, and maybe even use in certain decks that you're trying to stall out in. Wabuku was pretty much the best trap in the game. There was no Mirror Force yet. That's not coming out till Metal Raiders in a couple of weeks. So really, yeah, there wasn't a lot going on. So for spells that were semi-limited, you have Card Destruction, because Card Destruction, if you get a bad hand, you can disrupt your opponent's hand, okay? And also it helps you as another draw card, you know? And if you guys remember how powerful this card was in Dragon Rulers and Dark Worlds and things of that nature throughout the game of Yu-Gi-Oh's history, it was still an amazing card. So this card was just a draw card, but for a while it was at 2 of, and on this list it went to 2 of. Swords of Revealing Light is the other spell card that was limited. Now you may be asking yourself, why Swords of Revealing Light? In a game state that is very slow, Swords is very powerful. And you're going to see this thing where Swords even gets limited to 1 and then goes to 2, and it's just like Konami doesn't know what to do with Swords of Revealing Light to save their life. It was kind of like the Traveler of the ban list before, you know, Chaos Sorcerer for a bit. Down the road, that is. But yeah, it was a card that was very powerful in the early days of the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's why some players that you see, if they're coming back to the game and they haven't played since the beginning, they'll play Swords, because it's a turn. It gives you 3 turns to set up, and on top of that, your opponent can't attack you. Back then, that was powerful. Especially in a format right now where you have to look at where MST is not even out yet. That doesn't come out till Magic Rulers, also known as Spell Rulers. So, powerful cards. Now let's go back to the Legend of Blue Eyes set right now, and we're going to go over all the relevant cards that came out in that set. So these may be cards that just were relevant for a quick bit, or relevant in certain decks. We went through the entire set, me and Mike, for about 30 minutes and talked about all of these cards that were, you know, limited and whatnot. And Mike, I'm going to kill you, even though I have this piece of paper in front of me, but he made me have to say that Sparks was a meta-relevant card at some point in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. I don't know why Sparks was a meta-relevant card. I think Ukazi's better, and later down the road you'll see Ukazi be played in some early burn decks, but that's beside the point. I'm just throwing that out there for Mike, so he will be happy. But let's talk about meta-relevant cards, or cards that are nostalgic, or things of that nature. Cards that were used or have been used in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. So first off, you got the holy trinity of Blue Eyes White Dragon, and as you guys notice here, Blue Eyes White Dragon has alternative artwork. We are so used to seeing nowadays with the reprints they've had the original starter deck Blue Eyes artwork, as you see right here. But this was the first actual printing of Blue Eyes White Dragon, was this original artwork. It was a lot different. We're used to seeing the tablet artwork that came out much later, but this was the original artwork for Blue Eyes White Dragon. Very scary, and his neck looks weird. Then you have Dark Magician. This is not the original artwork for Dark Magician, as you see right here. This is the Yu-Gi starter deck artwork, and right here is the Legend of Blue Eyes artwork for Dark Magician. Looks completely different. Red Eyes, however, as you see, Red Eyes has the same exact artwork as you'll see later down the road when it gets its reprint in the Joey starter deck in 2003. It has the same exact artwork. Red Eyes artwork never changed until the anniversary pack, really. Now, we're going to talk about cards that were relevant in the current meta at that time. We'll go more into depth about the meta analysts, what type of decks were being played in the early part of the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! In a second. But we're going to mainly focus on cards that came out of the Legend of Blue Eyes, and then we'll talk about the structure decks, what cards were relevant at that time, what cards are relevant in the future metas, and what cards are even relevant today or were relevant as in certain decks at one period in time in the game's history. So let's get started. So one of the first cards that we still play today because it's unbanned is Regeki. Regeki, a very powerful board wiping card, as you guys all should know. This was a card that originally came out of Legend of Blue Eyes. Exodia and all his limbs, all 5 pieces of Exodia came out of this set. It was an amazing thing. It was the first win condition really in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! At the time, you have to remember there was no really even tournament prize cards that's, like you see in some certain events like Worlds and Nationals that are, certain prize cards. Let's say if this monster attacks, like Victory Dragon, if it attacks, you win the duel. This was the first win condition also in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Blue Eyes White Dragon, as you guys see here, this is not the original starter deck Blue Eyes White Dragon artwork. This is technically, because it came out on March 8th instead of March 29th, this is the original artwork of Blue Eyes White Dragon, as you see here. His neck is kind of weird looking, but this is the original artwork, guys. Next up, we have Dark Magician. As you guys know, this is technically, like I said the other one, this is technically the original artwork for Dark Magician with the greenish skin. It looks like Dark Magician is like a Green Lantern or something, but this is the original artwork. Later on, the starter deck artwork came out with the artwork that was known in the anime as well as Blue Eyes White Dragon. Next up, you have the part of the Trinity. You have Red Eyes Black Dragon. Now, the funny thing about Red Eyes Black Dragon is he will get a reprint in the 2003 Joey starter deck later on down the road. However, his artwork didn't change like Blue Eyes and Dark Magician. Interesting. I always thought that was kind of interesting. He would not really see alternative artwork until the anniversary pack later down the road. Next up, you have the Forgotten card, as I call him. He was a secret rare out of the set, but nobody remembers him. However, he was played in certain decks, I remember, at different points in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh's history, and that is Tri-Horn Dragon. He's a level 8 vanilla, but he has less attack, as you see, than Blue Eyes White Dragon. Thus, people prefer Blue Eyes White Dragon, plus it's Seto Kaiba's card, plus it's nostalgic, it's iconic, compared to Tri-Horn Dragon, doesn't stand up to it. So literally, that's one thing, but he was used at a point in time when the Blue Eyes White Dragon structure deck came out in 2003. You did see people trying him out. When Chaos Dragons were a thing in 2012, when that structure deck came out, you did see people trying this card out. So throughout the game of Yu-Gi-Oh's history, people have tried to tech in one Tri-Horn Dragon here or there, but it's never topped an event. But he has been played, I know, in local events and whatnot. Next up we have, guys, as I look down here, Monster Reborn came out as well in this set. As you guys know, very powerful card. There really wasn't a lot of special summoning at the game at this time. This was really the only card that any deck ran that was special summoning. Just think about that. Special summoning wasn't even prevalent in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! You had Fusion and Monster Reborn at this time. And for a good part of the early part of Yu-Gi-Oh's history, that will be the case until we get pretty much to, even Rituals, Fusions, Monster Reborn, Call of the Haunted, that's all. Special summoning was just reborn cards, or bringing out a powerful monster through a ritual or a fusion summon. That's about all. Or an effect. But it was hard to get off. Compared to now, where every deck special summons in some way, shape, or form. That is how much the game has power creeped and has evolved since the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh! Next up, we have Gaia the Fierce Knight. Iconic, and he was the other secret rare of the set, if you guys don't know about that. Very iconic card. I actually own one that is a secret rare that I got out of a box as a kid. Me and my brother brought a box like a couple years after the set got dropped. But yes, I have a Gaia the Fierce Knight secret rare. Very beautiful card artwork. Then you have, Gaia the Dragon Champion. Excuse me, that's what I meant to say, not Gaia. He also came out here. Regular Gaia and Gaia the Champion came out of this set. Next up, you have Polymerization. as you guys know. Now, polymerization wasn't really used for much of Yu-Gi-Oh's history. You saw it a couple of times being used. It really was not used at all in the game until, even meta relevant at all, until King of the Swamp came out way down the line, and also when heroes were a thing. But we really have not seen polymerization be used in the meta or the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Really that much until recently with Fright Furs and Melodiouses. Fright Furs, more prevalence, more so, but really we haven't seen decks revolve around the card polymerization till almost 15 years later. Wow! And nobody would really use polymerization back in the day because you're bringing out cards like Kabanawa Warrior and some other ones we'll talk about here in a second. Just, they're not worth it. Then we have Dark Hole, which is another good card. Board wiping, but it's a kind of a worse for Geki, but it's just as good. It's pretty much the kind of like if Batman is Regeki, then Robin is Dark Hole. Not as good, but it's still good. Then you have Curse of Dragon, came out with the set. A decent one tribute, but not as good as Summoned Skull at the end of the day, so. But the thing was, you could run Curse of Dragon with Lord of D, so that did work out if you had both of the structure decks, because Curse of Dragon did get printed in the Yu-Gi structure decks. So if you're combining structure decks, you could use Curse of Dragon with Lord of D. Then you have Maneater Bug, the most relevant effect monster in this entire set. Literally. Maybe Hane, but that's down the road. Maneater Bug was superior all the time. Maneater Bug was awesome. It was 1-for-1 removal. Flame Swordsman came out as a super in this set. Beautiful artwork of Flame Swordsman. Looks very nice, but he was used for instant fusion targets later on the road. Like a lot of these fusions were, they weren't used. Flame Swordsman maybe so because it was iconic, but I know many people just played Flame Swordsman in Duelist Kingdom rules, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Then we have Pot of Greed came out, and I apologize I keep looking down and looking at my list of cards here, there's a lot. We have Pot of Greed that came out as well. Draw 2. I think that's what Pot of Greed does, it draws 2. Correct? Does Pot of Greed draw 2, or if it's a shiny, hollowed out Pot of Greed, I've been told by a legendary duelist that it allows you to draw 3 cards. 3 cards if it's hollow. Rares and commons, just 2. But next we have Swordsman Radiant Light. Like I said, amazing stall card in the early part of the game. Next up we have Dark Flare Dragon. It was an instant fusion target, as some of you guys know, Dark Flare Dragon. We have Skull Servant. Shoutouts to Olympia. Skull Servant back in the day. Next to this card, I'm just going to point out, Basic Insect was considered a laughing stock in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! It was like, why would we summon this? Then King of the Skull Servant came out, and now all the way up to 2017, and we know what Skull Servants do. They can OTK, they make big monsters, go synchros with Shiranus and Omega. Nobody's laughing at Skull Servant anymore in 2017. If only we knew. But Konami, if you made Skull Servant no longer a laughing stock in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Can Basic Insect get some love? Next up we have, guys, Kabanawa Warrior, as I've been mentioning throughout this video. He was used in Madolches and whatnot as an instant fusion target. We also have Fusionist, which, not a bad card, but we also have Fusionist here. Trap Hole, which was one of the best traps next to Wabuku, really, at this time. Trap Hole could pretty much get rid of anything, but it was at... Pretty much Wabuku and Trap Hole were the best next to Just Desserts, and later down the road, as you'll see, Ultimate Offering. But there was very few powerful traps, and really for removal wise, Trap Hole was one of the best at this early stage in the game. But next we have Dragonist, the Wicked Knight. We also have Celtic Guardian, Mystic Elf, Aquamador. These were 2 cards along with Stone Soldier, as I show here. So these 3 right here, they were pretty much your defensive walls that could pretty much bide you time to set up for tribute fodder for your Summoned Skull, your Judge Man, and Curse of Dragon, whatever have you. Then we have Fissure, which was good 1-for-1 removal. You also have Beaver Warrior, because 10,000 attack Beaver, we know why Beaver Warrior is on this list, right? Right? Because he can get huge. And everybody likes to attack the Beaver. Hane, good card, but you really wasn't seeing Hane in the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh! It was the poor man's man-eater bug, but you would see him later on in the Synchro era to some degree. And then we also have Spirit of the Harp, which was another 2000 defensive wall. So there's a lot of defensive walls in this deck you could stall out on. Next up we have, guys, we're going to go over to the Yugi starter deck and talk about meta relevant cards in that deck. You have Neo the Magical Swordsman. The best way of putting it I can think of is this is compared to La Jin, this was Batman's Robin. Neo the Magical Swordsman and Battle Ox at the time, but they were the most, pretty much if you were building a deck back then, you ran 3 La Jin, 3 Neo the Magical Swordsman, and 3 Battle Ox. You also have Last Will, which is on the ban list if you guys don't know this card. This card is broken because of the ruling that was made on it, but Last Will came in the Yugi starter deck. You also have Wabuku, originally came out in the Yugi starter deck. It did not come out in the Legend of Blue Eyes. So we're just going over cards that came out in the Yugi starter deck and were not printed before. Man-Eating Treasure Chest, it was a 16 beater, so it was a respectable beater. You also had Dragon Zombie, a respectable 16 beater. You also had Great White, a respectable 16 beater that was a vanilla. All those monsters I just listed were vanilla monsters that were 16 beaters, and they were actually used if you were on a budget, I guess you could say. Then you also have Ultimate Offering, which is amazing. It is banned, but you will see this card being played in multiple decks throughout the course of Yu-Gi-Oh's history up to the ban list of 2013 is when I think it got banned off the top of my head. Very powerful card. I loved it in gadgets. Go M-Colt 40. Then we also have Wall of Illusions as well. A very good card. Though it may not have the defense of Giant Soldier of Stone and Aquamador and Spirit of the Harp, it was, if not better than them, because you could bounce things back. So if it was a tribute monster, well, they wasted their normal summon, it goes back to their hand. So it was pretty good. And if you could stall out, you can maybe use it to stall out and then maybe tribute something big for it. So there was a lot of different ways you could use it. I remember using this back in the day. I ran it in one of my decks. Summon Skull also got printed. I should note, even though it was already printed in the Legend of Blue Eyes set, Summon Skull was still a good reprint. It was one of the best reprints of the set. Then we also have Change of Heart, which was another notable reprint from Legend of Blue Eyes. Then we're going to go over to the Seto Kaiba starter deck right now, so let's go over there. We got Battle Ox, Rogue Doll. These are two just good vanillas, Battle Ox being the better one. Ukazi, 800 burn damage. Woot woot! We laugh at that now, but back then that was like, burn decks with sparks. Amazing. We got I'm gonna have fun pronouncing this. Guakiteno Magami. Guakiteno Magami. Now, you may say, why is this random vanilla even relevant? Well, my good friend Olympio and other people out there, if you guys know, you run it with Advanced Ritual Art. If you're trying to bring out a Herald of Perfection back in the day, you would run it. If you're trying to bring out Herald of Ultimateness, you run this card. And it came out of the Seto Kaiba starter deck. So, yeah, it's relevant because you use it with Advanced Ritual Art pretty much. Then we also have Legend the Mystical Genie, the best vanilla monster. This Legend made 18 beat 6 the standard in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! For a while. We also have, Lord of D. We have Flute of Summoning Dragons, as I put these two cards up on the screen here. This worked well with Blue Eyes White Dragon, Trihorn Dragon, different dragon type of decks that were played at the time. You could run Mountain, the field spell. So there was different decks you could run with this to bring out, and it was a way of special summoning to the field a lot. It was pretty much the two card combo that could bring a lot of special summoning to the field. Mass summoning, I guess you could say. We also have Just Desserts, which was another good burn card and a trap card that was used in the meta. You also have Ultimate Offering again, as well as it came in the Yugi deck, it came in this Seto Kaiba starter deck. You also have Judge Man, which was a very good one tribute card. Not as good as Summon Skull, but just as good. You also have D-Spell, which in the era before Mystical Space Typhoon, this was the main spell removal card. as well as you have Ryukishin Power, which was a 16 vanilla monster, which I just love the artwork of that card. So we're now going to go over the meta-relevant cards that came out doing this format, guys, and I have to tell you that, first off, there's not a lot of meta at this time in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Meta really wouldn't become a thing until 2003 and 2004. At this time, it was pretty much the wild, wild west, literally. Nobody was really paying attention to the meta. What's the best deck? Everything. Maybe if you were an older person or a late teenager, early adulthood, you may be able to use your smarts and figure out what was meta and what was not, and what cards to play and what was not. But for most players out there, majority of the community, you just ran whatever the hell you wanted. You didn't care. There was no meta, which it kind of makes this era in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Very unique in that aspect for these early formats, is that nobody really cared about the meta. It was all just the wild, wild west. I play where I want to play. So even though I'm going to talk about meta-relevant cards that a lot of decks used, just know that it wasn't where this, everybody ran 3 Lajin, 3 Neo, 3 Battle Ox. You ran whatever the hell you wanted because that's what you did. And like I said, between this March and May ban list, the limited list, excuse me, you could run weird deck combos. You could run 3 Pot of Greed, and Exodia is out. So you could technically run all 1, 2, 3, all the pieces of Exodia as a 3-of in your deck if you really wanted to go down that route. I don't know why, but you could. So literally, I'm saying, guys, it was the wild, wild west. Even though later on, it was still like people were still not playing meta, it was just still crazier because Pot of Greed's at 3, all these cards that are very powerful were at 3-of for that short period of time. But really, guys, meta was not a thing at that time. The internet was still young. There was no really books or articles about the game that people could look up upon. Later down the road, you'll see things like Pojo and whatnot pop up, and Beckett magazine, as I put a picture of Beckett up here. But at this time, that does not exist. That takes time. So people just play whatever was good at the schoolyard, pretty much. So let's talk about some cards, though, that even though there was no meta per se, and you're not going to see meta develop until 2003, really, until there's tournaments really happening, which happened during the summer of 2002, and as we go into 2003, you'll see the first tournament packs, and there will be some type of meta developing, but still, it's pretty much the wild, wild west. There's no one best deck. Now, the main meta-relevant deck at this time, guys, as we should point out, is Beatdown. Meta deck at this time, you had 2 meta decks, really, if you want to call them meta decks. Exodia, because you could have 3 Pot of Greed and everything. Beatdown-wise, was the main other deck was Beatdown. If you guys don't know what Beatdown is, it's caveman Yu-Gi-Oh, man. It's put your helmet on and just, I have the bigger monster and I'm going to punch you in the face. So that was the 2 relevant decks at the time. So let's talk about them. So Exodia, you have all your draw cards and everything, but for monster-wise staples, we have Legend the Mystical Genie of the Lamp, Neo the Magical Swordsman, Battle Ox. So Legend, Neo, and Battle Ox were your main beaters at this time, along with Summon Skull being your main tribute monster, if you were trying to build a relevant deck from back then. You also have Man-Eater Bug, which was your main monster removal for a monster form. Wall of Illusion I put in here because, yes, you have all these other 2,000 defenders, but this one actually had a decent effect. You also had Giant Soldier of Stone because that was the biggest defensive monster with 2,000 defense and 13,000 attack, 1,300 attack. That was the biggest defensive attack monster. For spells, there's a good chunk of them. You have Fissure, Swords of Revealing Light for stalling. You also have, for traps, you have Just Desserts, Trap Hole, and Wabuku. Those were your main traps right there. Just Desserts, Trap Hole, Wabuku. So back to the Power 5, like I just mentioned. The Power 5, some people called it the Power 5, or as I called them, the staples of the staples. Everybody ran these if you had the ability to have them. And those were Pot of Greed, Change of Heart, Regeki, Dark Hole, Monster Reborn, the Power 5, the Holy 5 Apostles. So that is all for today, guys. We're going to be talking about when it comes to the March to May 2002 format. We've already gone over the limited list and everything, what happened. On the next video, we'll be talking about Metal Raiders and things of that nature, going into Tournament Pack 1 and going into the summer season of 2002. Just like right now, we're kind of reliving history, I guess. We just got done with March, April, and May. Now we're heading into the summer season. We're now going to go talk about something that I mentioned earlier, which was Duelist Kingdom rules. Now, you may be asking yourself, Duelist Kingdom rules. Now, this is pretty much the game before the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And you may be asking yourself, what does that mean, Seto? As many of you guys know, probably if you were young at the time, you didn't even read the rule book. If you did, amazing. But most kids at this time played the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Just like the show. So what I mean by that is, if I had a Blue Eyes White Dragon in hand, I don't need to tribute 2 monsters for my Blue Eyes White Dragon. I can just normal summon it and screw the rules like Seto Kaiba himself. You know, Duelist Kingdom, as you guys know, if you've watched the original series of the game of Yu-Gi-Oh!, they did not tribute, they did not do anything. That didn't happen to Battle City. And because the show didn't show you how to properly play the game of Yu-Gi-Oh!, the younger audience thought that's how the game is played. So just about everybody and their mother that didn't read the rule book or know any better just played the game by normal summoning monsters and doing that, and just chalking their deck full of level 7s and 2000 beaters and just normal summoning them like Yugi and Kaiba and Joey and all of them and Mai. So that's slowly what happened in the early part of the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Nobody played by the rule book if you were playing at school. I know a lot of kids, even myself included, when you first started, if you played back then and you first played the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And you watched the show, you probably played by the rule book. You didn't play by the rule book, you just played by the show rules, which you saw. And I know people out there that even went by the show's effects. So I remember one friend of mine later on, he literally thought that swords were really light. So if you had swords up on the field, the monsters that were on the field currently could not attack. But if I normal summoned another monster, that monster could attack, because just like in the show in the first episode, you know, Seto, you know, Yugi played swords, it stopped the Blue Eyes, but then Kaiba played Judge Man, I think it was, and then Yugi attacked with Dark Magician. Judge Man shouldn't attack because the swords was effective, but we went by those rules in the game of the Duelist Kingdom rules, pretty much, because that's what the show showed us how to do. Later on, Konami fixed that, the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Fixed that and started playing by the official rules to some degree. But for the early part of Yu-Gi-Oh! There was a thing called the Duelist Kingdom rules. As we look back, that's what we call them, because you didn't play by the rules really. You just played by the show. If you read the rule book, then you played by the rule book. But a lot of us went to locals for the first time and got our asses kicked because we didn't know any better. But that's the story of the Duelist Kingdom rules, guys, if you just want to know about that. So guys, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you would like to, there will be a link at the end of the video that you can subscribe to. Or if you would like to, you can subscribe to that little button down below, that little red bar button. But also, guys, I would like to give a shout out to my friend Yu-Gi-Oh! Tolly, also known as Mike Tolly. He's the one that's done all the editing for these videos that you've seen so far. And a shout out to Raging Raid Raptor, who did the intro and the logo for all the videos that you've seen on this channel thus far. So if you guys like to subscribe to them or go check them out, there'll be links to their channel at the end of this video and down in the description below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and remember to subscribe and like. Thank you guys very much for your support.